A single dad made a selfless gesture, not realizing the woman he helped owned the building he slept in. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. The wind swept through the narrow city street like it had no regard for the living. Buildings towered on either side, glassy and impersonal. Neon signs flickered above, casting occasional light onto the sidewalk below. Pedestrians hurried past, wrapped in thick coats, their faces buried in scarves. No one noticed the man sitting against the stone wall. Thomas tightened his arms around Lily, tucking her closer beneath his coat. She was still, her small breaths warming the inside of his hoodie. At 5 years old, she had learned not to complain. Her wide brown eyes had once sparkled with endless questions, but lately, silence had become her way of understanding the world. The duffel bag beside them sagged with exhaustion. It carried the remains of another life, an extra shirt, a pair of socks, a crumpled drawing Lily made in the shelter. Nothing that could shield them from the cold that seeped into their bones. Thomas looked down at her sleeping face, brushed back a loose curl from her cheek, and exhaled slowly. He hadn't always been like this. Just a year ago, he had a steady job, a place with warm walls, even dreams of starting his own business. But dreams faded fast when the bills piled higher than the paychecks. The night deepened. The rhythm of passing footsteps blurred into one long whisper. Across the street, restaurant lights glowed golden, laughter floating from within. A world so close, yet unreachable. He imagined what a plate of warm food would feel like. What it would be like for Lily to fall asleep in a Rachel bed again. But tonight, this sidewalk was their home, and he had to make it enough. He leaned back against the building, feeling the ache in his spine from nights spent upright. Above them, windows gleamed with lives being lived, someone boiling tea, a man watching television, a child tapping on the glass. Thomas couldn't remember the last time he'd stood behind a window and looked out instead of in. Lily shifted, her hand finding his chest in sleep. Thomas held it, squeezing gently. A soft gust blew through, rustling papers near the curb. Thomas adjusted the coat over her shoulders and glanced up at the darkened sky. No stars tonight, just clouds gathering, hinting at rain. He didn't have an umbrella, just a father's will. The city never stopped. It moved, bright and blind, unaware of the quiet stories unfolding in its shadow. Thomas didn't expect a miracle. He didn't pray for one. But he believed, faintly, stubbornly, that a single act of kindness could matter, even if the world didn't notice. And so he stayed there, protecting what little he had left. A man without shelter, but not without purpose. A father without warmth, yet still offering comfort. As Lily nestled deeper into his chest, he closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to survive another hour, another night, until something changed, until someone saw. The night had grown colder, the kind of cold that crept under clothes and pressed into skin like unwelcome hands. Streetlights cast long shadows over the pavement, painting the world in shades of steel and gold. The occasional car swept by with a hiss, headlights blinking like silent watchers. She appeared suddenly, half running, half limping along the sidewalk in heels too thin for comfort. Her coatless frame shivered with every step. A sleek navy dress clung to her like an afterthought, soaked at the hem from stepping into a slush puddle. Her hair, once carefully done, now clung to her cheeks and neck, damp with fog and sweat. Rachel Hale, but no one knew her name here. Not tonight. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she neared the tall granite building. Hers, though she wouldn't say that aloud. Her hands, red from the cold, clutched a small leather purse like it could shield her from the wind. She'd left a charity gala without explanation, a room filled with polished laughter and too much wine. She just had to get out. And now here she was, bare, breathless, and on the verge of breaking down in front of her own empire. As she stumbled near the steps of the building, her foot caught the edge of the curb. She fell to one knee with a quiet gasp, her palms scraping the concrete. She winced, not from pain, but the weight of the moment pressing down all at once. Then warmth, not from within, from someone else. A voice, gentle. "Miss, are you all right?" She looked up, startled. A man knelt beside her, holding out a blanket. It was frayed, faded, and smelled faintly of the street, but it radiated kindness. He didn't ask questions. He didn't recognize her. He simply placed the blanket around her shoulders like it was the most natural thing in the world. Behind him, nestled against the wall, a little girl lay asleep, swaddled in a coat too big for her tiny frame. Rachel couldn't speak. Her throat tightened. She stared at the man. His eyes tired, his face weathered, but his expression calm. "You're freezing," he said. "You need this more than we do." She nodded slowly, the weight of his gesture hitting her harder than the cold. She managed to whisper, "Thank you." He nodded once, already turning back toward his daughter, pulling the coat tighter around the child's shoulders. Rachel stood motionless, wrapped in the warmth of a stranger's sacrifice. It wasn't just a blanket. It was dignity, offered without hesitation by someone who had almost nothing. She didn't tell him who she was. She couldn't. As she walked away into the dark, tears blurred her vision, not from the cold, but from something far deeper. A crack had opened in her world, subtle but irreparable. Tonight, someone had given her more than warmth. He had given her perspective, and she would never forget it. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Polished floors reflected soft ambient lights, and quiet classical music drifted through the marble corridor. At the end stood a tall glass door etched with gold. Rachel Hale, Hale Properties. She stepped in. "Good evening, Miss Hale," the security guard greeted, rising from behind the desk. Rachel offered a small nod, barely meeting his eyes. Her heels clicked against the floor as she walked past, the warmth of the blanket still clutched tightly in her arms, drawing curious glances. No one asked. Upstairs, the double doors to her office recognized her fingerprint. They opened into a space that overlooked the city, sleek, expansive, untouched by the world below. She paused in the doorway. The silence felt heavier tonight. Her desk, always pristine, suddenly looked sterile. The skyline beyond the glass stretched endlessly, glowing with ambition. But all she could see was the corner of the sidewalk she'd been on just hours earlier. She draped the blanket across her office chair, then stood there, unmoving. The image of the man's face stayed with her. He didn't flinch at the cold. He didn't hesitate. In a world where everyone clung to what little they had, he gave his last layer of warmth to someone he didn't know. No exchange. No agenda. Just instinct. She lowered herself onto the leather sofa near the window, legs tucked beneath her. Her phone buzzed with unread messages. Some from board members, others from reporters still buzzing about the gala she had left behind. She ignored them all. She glanced at the framed blueprint leaning against the wall. Phase 3 redevelopment project, dozens of units cleared for demolition, residents forced out. Names had never accompanied the files. Only statistics, graphs, profit margins. But tonight, one of them had a face. A father, sleeping on the concrete just steps away from her lobby. She removed her earrings, set them down gently on the table. One by one, she peeled away the layers that had armored her for years. Heels, necklace, designer coat, all symbols of distance from people like him. Rachel Hale had built empires. She had reshaped neighborhoods, rewritten skylines. Her name opened doors and silenced opposition. But it hadn't prepared her for the humility of a man with nothing handing her hope without a second thought. She turned toward the window again. The street looked small from this height. Safe. Almost unreal. But she knew better now. She had sat on that street, knee against cold pavement, feeling invisible until someone chose to see her. Her chest tightened. He gave her a blanket. She had the power to give him a life. And for the first time in years, Rachel Hale didn't feel like a developer. She felt like a witness. And something inside her stirred, quiet, unfamiliar, but impossible to ignore. Morning arrived, soft but unkind. Rachel stood across the street, staring at the spot where it had all happened, just cold pavement now, littered with a few wind-blown napkins. The man, the child, the blanket, all gone. No trace. No name. She pulled her hoodie tighter, a stark contrast to the tailored suits she usually wore. Today she looked like no one special, intentionally. Her heels had been replaced by worn sneakers, her confidence by urgency. She crossed the road and crouched near the steps, scanning for anything left behind. Nothing. No bag. No drawing. Just faint impressions where bodies had rested. "Have you seen a man and little girl here?" she asked a street vendor setting up nearby. The vendor squinted. "Plenty of folks come and go," he shrugged, uninterested. Rachel pressed further, cafes, shopkeepers, even the parking attendant. No one remembered. No one cared. It was as if the moment that changed her hadn't happened at all. By noon, she was in her office, pulling up surveillance footage. There, she pointed as the grainy video froze. Thomas, gently wrapping Lily in a coat. Find where they went next. Her assistant looked unsure but obeyed. Rachel watched the screen longer than necessary. She memorized his face, the way he looked at his daughter like she was everything. A man like that didn't beg. He protected. He endured. He deserved to be seen. Hours passed. Still nothing. Then, a call came in. Security footage from a nearby lot had picked up movement late last night. A figure with a child slipping through a broken fence behind an old hardware store. Rachel didn't wait. She drove herself, navigating alleys that barely held sunlight. The lot was silent. Cracked windows, peeling paint, a broken sign dangling from rusted chains. She stepped out, heart thudding. A flicker of movement caught her eye beneath a low awning near the bus station's sidewall. She crept forward. And there they were. Thomas, curled protectively around Lily, their bodies wrapped in layers of blankets, cardboard cushioning their small shelter. He slept lightly, face etched in exhaustion. Lily's hand rested on his chest, her cheeks pink from the chill. Rachel froze. The street noise fell away. This wasn't charity, it was revelation. She had spent years developing buildings, optimizing layouts, negotiating deals, but none of that taught her how to face this. A man who had given without asking, now sleeping on cardboard beneath her city. Her city. She didn't speak yet. Instead, she crouched a few feet away, watching them in silence. A different kind of blueprint formed in her mind, not of walls and glass, but of compassion. A plan that had nothing to do with revenue, everything to do with redemption. The wind shifted. Thomas stirred. Rachel stood, ready now, not just to repay a gesture, but to change a life. The smell of eggs and fresh bread wafted through the still morning air. Thomas stirred awake, blinking against the pale light breaking through the cracked wall above. Lily remained curled beside him, arms wrapped tightly around her stuffed rabbit, oblivious to the world. Then came footsteps, measured, careful. He tensed. Rachel appeared, dressed simply in jeans and a loose sweater, a brown paper bag in one hand, and a folded garment in the other. No entourage, no camera crew, no badge of power. Just her. Thomas rose halfway, shoulders squared. He didn't say anything, but the wall behind his eyes was high and sturdy. I brought breakfast, she said, gently setting the bag down. He eyed it with skepticism. She offered the clothes next, clean, folded, warm. Thought these might help. Still, no reply. Then came the envelope. She hesitated before handing it over. It's nothing complicated, she said. Just something I'd like you to read. Thomas took it cautiously, lips pressed into a firm line. He slid out the paper, then froze. His brow furrowed. A lease agreement. His name printed clearly across the top. Unit number 612. Fully furnished. Rent, 0. He looked up, stunned. Rachel met his gaze without flinching. It's not charity, she said softly. It's because you reminded me of who I used to be. Someone who believed in people. Thomas shook his head slowly, disbelief still gripping him. Why? He murmured. You don't even know me. You didn't know me either, she replied. But you gave me something I didn't even know I needed. No questions asked. No conditions. He looked down again, hands trembling slightly around the paper. I'm not used to people showing up like this. This isn't pity, Rachel added. It's respect. The silence stretched between them like a thin line, delicate but charged. Thomas lowered himself beside Lily, staring at the paper for a long moment. His lips moved silently, reading every word again, checking it was real. Then, his fingers curled around the edges. He nodded, just once. Rachel exhaled. There's a shower. Hot water. Groceries already stocked. You can move in today. That night, the doorman barely blinked as Thomas entered the building he once slept beside. Lily clutched his hand, her eyes wide with wonder. The elevator felt surreal. So did the warm hallway. The turn of the key. Inside, the apartment glowed softly. Simple but beautiful. A welcome basket on the counter. A plush bed. A small children's bookshelf beside a crib that had clearly been added last minute. Lily gasped, darting to the soft cushions, laughing as she bounced. Thomas didn't move. He stood in the doorway for a long time, eyes stinging. Then, slowly, he crossed the threshold and closed the door behind them. He didn't say thank you. He didn't have to. Rachel had already left, but her words stayed. It's not pity. It's respect. The kettle whistled softly as sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor. Thomas stood by the window, adjusting his collar in the reflection of the glass. The navy button-down felt strange, like it belonged to someone else, but it fit, and for the first time in a long while, so did he. Behind him, Lily twirled through the living room in her new uniform, her laughter bouncing off the freshly painted walls. Her hair was tied in 2 neat puffs, her backpack already slung over one shoulder even though school was still an hour away. "Daddy, look!" she giggled, spinning until she lost balance and landed on the couch in a heap of giggles. He turned, grinning. "You're going to charm your whole class." "I already know my numbers and letters," she beamed. There was a knock at the door. Rachel stepped in, carrying a small box of pastries in the ease of someone who had been there before. She set the box on the counter and took in the space. Plants on the sill, Lily's artwork taped to the fridge, shoes neatly lined near the door. "I love what you've done with the place," she said, eyes settling on Thomas. "Still figuring out where everything goes," he replied, pouring water into 2 mugs. "But it feels like home." They sat at the table, steam rising between them. No suits, no silence, just quiet understanding. "Maintenance crew's been good to me," Thomas offered. "Hands are blistered, but I sleep better now." Rachel smiled. "We've enrolled you in the single-parent support program. You'll get access to night classes if you want them." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Why are you doing all this?" She hesitated, then leaned back in her chair. "When I was a kid, my father used to leave envelopes on doorsteps. Grocery money, sometimes rent. Never signed. He said the world didn't need to know, only the people who needed it." Thomas listened quietly. "I forgot that part of him," she continued, "until that night on the sidewalk." Their gazes held for a moment, not romantic, not sentimental, just layered with the kind of trust born from shared vulnerability. Lily appeared between them, holding a drawing. "This is our new house," she said, proudly. Crayon windows, a stick figure Thomas, and a big smiling sun. Rachel examined it like fine art. "You're quite the architect." Lily beamed. Later, as Thomas walked her to the school bus, Rachel lingered in the doorway. She watched them disappear down the street, the man once invisible to the world now walking tall, hand in hand with the little girl who carried his heart. In a city that often overlooked stories like his, a new one had begun. Not because of money, not because of power, but because 2 strangers chose to see each other. The grand lobby sparkled under soft lights. Gone were the cold marble echoes and sterile formality. Tonight, the space breathed differently. Round tables replaced velvet ropes. Fresh flowers sat beside name cards. Music hummed gently beneath the murmur of conversation. The polished floors now held more than wealth, they held purpose. At the far end, a modest stage had been set. Nothing extravagant. Just a microphone, a podium, and a cloth-covered plaque mounted on the wall. Rachel stood behind the podium, her hair pulled back simply, her voice steady. "When this building was first designed, it was meant to be impressive," she began, scanning the room. "But sometimes the things that impress us don't inspire us. Sometimes they just make us feel smaller." She paused, eyes settling on a man near the front. Thomas stood in a charcoal blazer, hands gently resting on Lily's shoulders. She wore a yellow dress and a grin that could melt concrete. Her eyes bounced from guest to guest, unaware of the cameras, the applause, the quiet gasps when Rachel spoke her next words. "Not long ago, I found myself outside these very doors. Cold, lost in my own way. And a stranger, someone with far less than I had, wrapped me in a blanket without hesitation." The room quieted. No one shifted. No one blinked. That stranger reminded me that humanity isn't measured by wealth or status or titles, but by what we choose to give when no one's watching. She motioned gently toward the plaque. An assistant stepped forward and lifted the cloth. The room exhaled. "In honor of selfless hearts who give even when they have nothing." Applause rose, soft at first, then swelling. Rachel looked toward Thomas. "Would you come up here?" He hesitated, then moved slowly to the stage, Lily holding his hand until the last step. He stood behind the mic, blinking under the lights, uncomfortable in the spotlight. He cleared his throat, then spoke plainly. "I didn't know who she was that night. I just saw someone who looked cold." He glanced down, voice softer. "I just did what I hoped someone would do for my daughter." There was no follow-up, no dramatic exit line, just truth. Silence held for a moment longer, then the crowd stood in unison, applauding not out of courtesy, but conviction. Thomas turned, stepping off the stage. Lily rushed to him, and wrapped her arms around his waist, beaming up at him like he'd just built her the world. Rachel watched from the side, her expression unreadable, but her eyes shone. Outside, the city remained busy. But within these walls, something rare had taken root. Not a transaction, not a performance, just a quiet loop of grace, completed. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Mention names of the characters in the story. Did Thomas's act of kindness move you? Was Rachel's transformation inspiring? What did Lily's innocence mean to you? We'd love to hear your favorite moment. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that could touch your heart or change your perspective.